All right, good evening, everybody. All 88 or 89 of you. We're growing a little bit at a time. We appreciate it. To those that listen and have decided to subscribe, and you appreciate what these hillbillies have to say. So we look forward to your feedback. But this is episode 10 of our Unfiltered Race Fans Only podcast. We've had our first race in the season in the books, and so we've got quite a bit of content to talk about between what's been said in the media with the media lead ups, a handful of the podcasts, and now we've had a race too. So, and then on top of it, we got a new point, added to the season. So I guess we'll start with so much. There's so much. Uh, we'll start with the hottest news, which was this morning they released Xfinity is no longer going to be the title sponsor after this year, but they have extended their premier series partnership across all three series as that structure, and it's going to allow for a point to each driver and team for whoever secures the fastest lap. So it's an in-race point. So award to the driver and the owner with the fastest lap during each point earning National Series event. And this applies to all three series. Only drivers who are earning championship points are eligible. So no EEPs, no one-offs. So that's
Okay,
good.
that's good to know.
So I like that they can't take that away. If Helio, for example, just because he's the first one for the season, were to score the fastest lap while drafting in the Daytona 500, he doesn't take that away from whoever the next person is. So that's good.
Yep.
And it can be achieved. The big point is that it's achievable at any stage in the race, whether it's first, second, or last. So we could start with that. Obviously, it's unfortunate to see the Xfinity Series lose a title sponsor. Um, but Xfinity is now owned and or has been for a little bit by NBC. So I'm curious what the overall media deal had to do with maybe that. We saw NBC cut
Interesting.
back some of its content over the last couple of years with the NASCAR America going away for the love of the weekly stuff, the Motor Mouths, things like that. Their podcast that Nate Ryan hosted, is basically non-existent. Used to be like a weekly thing, and I think they might have had like 5 episodes last year, which is down considerably. So I'm not sure how that all plays together, other than they have an ownership stake in it. But we'll start with that one. So, what do you think about adding a point to the fastest car in race total lap time across all three series?
Well, first, I want to go over the Xfinity leaving
All right.
that
Yeah.
series. Uh, I think that's a big deal. First off, I think it's kind of sad we keep losing sponsorship deals for that series.
Yeah.
But I did see a potential positive. When we stopped using Monster, we went to the NASCAR Cup Series
Yeah.
because of what everybody kept on calling it the Cup Series. That you wouldn't, it's kind of like Truck Series.
Hmm.
There were still people calling it Craftsman, and it hadn't been Craftsman in years. Now we got Craftsman back,
Yeah.
which is cool. But I saw something on X earlier today, which I think would be neat. Just like they would with Cup, they should call it the Grand National Division again.
Okay.
So have it Grand National, maybe whatever sponsor you find, do something like you did with Cup. Find four sponsors that will sponsor them as a what are those called? The four sponsors
The
for Cup.
premier series, the series premier
Have four
sponsors.
premier sponsors for the
Yeah.
Grand National Division, and you would never have to worry about people saying Bush or Nation. I know people that call it Nationwide still because that's
Yeah.
when they started watching it.
Yep.
So bring Grand National back. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I agree. I think that's the right way to go. It aligns with NASCAR's overall vision with what they've done with Cup. You've got the Cup Series, and then it has four anchor partners. Right now, you've got Coke, Xfinity, um, was
Geico.
Geico, they're gone.
Oh,
Uh,
Geico's gone.
yeah, I believe they're ending theirs if I remember, but I don't remember who replaces them, who's going to replace them. I just know that I believe they're leaving. Um, but you have these anchor partners, but then you can have a brand identity for the series long term. And I agree. I think that's the right way to go. Uh, I don't think they'll have a hard time securing a sponsor because
The
we
other one's
just signed
gone.
a new. If they stick with the total series sponsorship model. I don't think they'll have a hard time. And it does say in the article that's their first priority. They haven't gone down this other model we're talking about. But if they do search for a series wide sponsor, I don't expect them to have too big a problem because it's a lower cost entry point. The CW is airing all the races already, so that's already done. The TV contracts are already in place. So, Xfinity
Maybe
said
it'll
they
be
were sticking
somebody that's
around.
already in line with CW.
Yep. So all these things are already kind of in place. So it should make this transition easier compared to if they were having to also still negotiate the TV contracts going into this.
Yeah.
So I think that, so I'm not expecting that this to kind of drag into the end of the year like it did last time with some of these other things where you wouldn't find out if Monster's sticking around for another year or whatever the case may be. I think you'll have an answer probably. And again, the Xfinity series now, the Grand National series, what it is, most weekends, it's the best racing on the track. Even though it's not the highest level superstars, the cars, the platform usually produces some of the best racing and has for years now. So, in terms of, and its eyeball viewership has gone up, it's obviously attracted a lot of attention for it to get a record almost what $880 million deal. So its total TV deal was 880 million. So they're not too far below the $1 billion mark for their own second tier series. So I feel like if you're at that market value, that viewership value, there are, I would think, a bunch of brands that would want to get that exposure, especially since now I believe they've also, there was a change in the running that has to do with the ability to enter the lower series by the Cup guys. So there will be more options. I don't remember what the rule change was off the top of my head. I'll see if I can find it. But they made a new change in the charter agreements that would allow, they opened it up basically. So you
Okay.
might see more. They didn't talk about it a lot, but I remember Bob mentioned it. So you might
I think
see
I
more
heard they might
of
well do
Kyle
eight
Bosch.
now.
Hmm?
I think it's eight. I think they can do
Yeah.
eight now
So
instead of
even if
five.
you opened it up to eight, well, that's eight more chances for a Dale Jr., a Kyle Busch, you know, a Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski to go down, any of these guys, Chase Elliott, where they need to. Oh, there's our logo. This is our first time doing this, so we decided to try this way. But I just think it gives you more exposure options. So
Right.
I think that'll be good, and in turn should help grow it again, make it more marketable, easier to secure a new anchor sponsor or several anchor sponsors if they go that route.
Yeah. So with the point that you asked me about, I like it. I think it's a great idea.
Yep.
It's obviously taken from F1. The only thing I don't like about it is that it's at a normal point. I would be all the way on board if it was a playoff point because the moment the playoffs start, that those it say somehow you were able to be the fastest car for one lap at every race.
Yeah.
You're now losing 26 points.
Yeah.
They're
I
gone.
agree.
Gone. And yeah, you can get the fastest lap at the first race of the playoffs, second race, third race. But guess what? After that round, those are gone. There's no way to keep them. So I'm for it, but make it a playoff point, not a regular point.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would like to have seen it be a championship point, or a playoff point, however you want to record it as. Or no, you know what? Yeah, just leave it as a championship point. I am, however, glad, we for years we had the whoever led the most laps, whoever had the leading at the halfway, so you had leading at halfway at one point was a bonus
The
monetarily.
halfway money,
Yeah, so
what
you
it
had the
was,
halfway
halfway
money. So
money.
you had all these incentives. Everybody argues the stages offset the need to make them race for leading the most laps.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
I
not
don't,
right because
I
Bob
agree.
Hawkins mentioned it, and I said no. I said you can lead the most laps and never score a play and never score a stage point in that race,
Yep, if you pit at the
especially
wrong
road
time or the
racing.
caution comes out during a pit cycle, you could have led two-thirds of that first stage and we're going to come out leading and caution, you get stuck in the back and now you're out of the stage points and you got nothing for leading all those laps.
Yeah, like
So,
he mentioned NASCAR views it. It's you're going to win the stage because you led the most laps. No, if you're on a on a road course, which is why me and you both do not like stages on road courses, you're pitting to stay up front to try to win the race.
Yep.
So what are you not getting? You're not getting that one playoff point, and you're not getting 10 race points.
Yep.
It's gone. So that their logic is flawed. It's insanely flawed. You still should have points for leading the most laps and points for leading a lap because stage points do not always go to those that lead the most laps.
Now I will say so this was not NASCAR's idea. This was Xfinity's idea, and that was in the Sports Business Journal article. This was not something NASCAR thought of or even entertained. Xfinity said this is something we want to do as a premier title sponsor, an anchor sponsor to all the series affiliated, and they had to bring it all the way up through NASCAR brass, and everybody had to agree on it because obviously the championship point structure and all those things now include the teams, the drivers. Like there's this list of people. There's more, buy-in from the garage based on the new charter agreement. So the team owners have more say about the governance, things like that. So adding something like this had to go through more eyes and more hands and more discussion, which is good. I'm glad it came out in their favor. I'm curious if, you've got the Bush Light Pole Award, for example. Right now, you get nothing for having a pole other than a preferentials. You used to have a real advantage there, and you would also, if you got a pole, would be in the clash. Well, now everybody gets an opportunity to invite to the clash, so you negated half of that benefit. And pit stalls are so variable now, especially with the way they've redone them with the shortening of the fields, that having the pole at a lot of these tracks doesn't even matter. So I
Not to
would like to
mention,
see
if
it.
you're
Yep.
Xfinity your truck,
Yep.
you get the pole this week. You don't get to pick your stall until next week,
Yep.
which
So
is ridiculous. Like I got the pole for Bristol, but I qualified 25th last week, so I'm picking 25th pit stalls this week.
yep. Oh, that was another thing we didn't talk about, that they simplified qualifying. So we'll come back to that in
Okay.
relation to pit stall selection. So, but I just feel like, okay, I would like to see Bush Light, for example, since they are the poll sponsor for Cup. I would like to see them bring something forward like that for 2026 because it's too late to introduce it to competition this year with us literally being a week
Is
away.
it though? Is it?
You would think introducing this right after the Clash would have been the wrong time, but since it was a non-points event and exhibition, I see where it's still okay because you still got 2 weeks to the Daytona 500. But I think if you wait any later till probably Friday, it's probably too late to have the conversation because of the number of
As long as you do
channels
it
it's got to
before
go
the
through
first
for approval.
qualifying session, you're good.
Yeah. So, um, but overall, I like it. I think it's funny they borrowed it from F1. So
Yep.
they didn't go back into their own past, which has been a mantra lately, with we're going to Rockingham. We had a practice session there for the race that's going to be later in the spring. We've went back to North Wilkesboro. We have now gone back to Bowman Gray. But instead of using our own old points rule on how we award points, we went and stole something from F1.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now the positive merits of it, I mean, there's definitely some positive merits to it. Like you said, there's 26 potential points in the regular season. There's 9 potential points you could pick up in those 9 playoff races if you were to advance in each of the 3 rounds. You could gain up to 3 points to help you over your competitors
Yep.
to get to the next one. So in a
And then
place
if
like
you get it, and if
Talladega,
you get it in the final round, it doesn't matter if you're in the final four because it's where you finish.
yeah. So you could be racing for the stage 1 point, stage 2 points, and in the main stage. And that main stage in Talladega, for example, or Atlanta is much larger. So you can afford to drop back, try and get some runs, and see if you can get the draft just right to get a bonus point and
Yep.
still finish well, those kind of things. Or come in, you're not finishing in the top 10 for example, today at Coda, but you've gotten some stage points. And so whether you finish 20th or 30th isn't you may still finish there anyway, so you may want to take that risk and come in pit late and go and get a flying lap, to use the F1 term. So I think there's good. I just think there's more room that they could go. I'm glad the sponsor pushed the issue. I think it's time that the sponsors we do talk about too much, both the media side of the house and the fans as a whole, how much TV partners and sponsors have a role in like shaping the competition. Feels like more often in the negative way. We got the playoffs that way. We got the chase that way. Fans weren't asking for that for 50 something years. That was if we're a sprint at the time, or the Nextel cup chase for the cup, fans weren't asking for that. Nextel basically said, if we're going to be the title sponsor, this is what we want. And then Monster kind of revamped some stuff when they came along. And so, you know, I think it's good that they have a say and that for once their idea is actually a good idea. I just would like to
Yeah.
see, some other stuff put back in there.
Yep.
So I think we covered that pretty well. Um, let's see. So I did mention it briefly. Uh, there's not knockout qualifying round anymore. There's no like group A, group B. Everybody's just gonna line up and go.
Thank
Because
God.
it got too confusing. There was nothing, I think that was, as far as I know, that was a TV drama type thing. And
Are
you
they going to
pointed out
draw
several
for?
times.
Are they going to draw like they used to now?
I believe so. But it's gonna be simplified back down to one round, which is good. It became too convoluted. How does the pole sitter in second place not always have the fastest two because they might be in group A or group B and
The pole sitter will
all
always be your fastest out of the second round, but the outside guy might be the third fastest.
yep.
But because he was the fastest in this group, oh, he's up here. What
Yep.
the
And
hell?
so it created a lot of confusion. I know our friend Kevin would, bitch and complain about it, and rightfully so. Like, you and I are diehard fans, and I couldn't understand it half the time. At least I will say at the end of the season, Fox didn't do a good job about this that I recall, but NBC at least lined up because of some complaints in this qualifying grid on the TV. They would post like, okay, A is going to go here, B is going to go here to kind
Yep.
of show you how they would be seated because it was confusing. Like I remember one race, one of the races toward the end of the season last year where Chase Elliott was way faster than the pole sitter and he started like
That
third. You're like, this
wasn't the
doesn't make,
pole sitter, it was the outside pole sitter.
or yeah, the outside pole sitter, and you're like, why is he lining up fourth or fifth? Like this doesn't make any sense.
He was lined up fifth,
Yeah, and we're
and he was the second
like, how are you
fastest
the
car in
third
that
fastest?
event.
Like in the contradictory part was in their old layout, they had them listed in a line. So in that line, you had them by fastest speed, but then when you did the grid, the line you had listed of first to 10th in that final round didn't match the grid line out. So if I was third over here, why am I fifth over here? This doesn't match.
If you remember when you and I went to Bristol, we were talking in the stands.
Yep.
We're like, I think Larson's going to be second, but I'm not sure
Yep.
because he's in this group. But they're on the pylon up there, it's showing that he's fourth. But I'm pretty sure he's going to start second, and that's what it ended up being. But it was like, come
Yep.
on.
And we were talking at the same time, like, I bet you Kevin's gonna be pissed because this is confusing shit.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
um, all right, so now on to the main event. We had our first race of the weekend or the season, even though it was a non-points race. We went back to Bowman Gray. We both thought they had repaved it. I'm glad they didn't. And they didn't do anything to it really. Uh, my
They added
initial
safety barriers,
impressions,
and those are there to stay.
yep. My initial impression of the race, and I'm interested to see what yours was because, you're rooting for Larson and he did not have such a good race, or at least not a good heat section, but
He made the show somehow.
yeah, he somehow they fixed that car enough to get in. But what I enjoyed about it was even though they're both quarter mile tracks, this in LA being purpose built, so it's hard to compare them apples to oranges because LA was fresh asphalt every time. They couldn't leave
And it
it
was
down.
banked.
This is very aged asphalt. And maybe LA didn't get a fair shake in the eyes of traditional racing fans because it is fresh asphalt. And when we first started going there, we started right pretty much with the next gen car, and it was awful from the get-go because we hadn't softened up the tire yet. This car was just awful on short tracks in general. So I really enjoyed Bowman Gray because I felt like I know I told you and Chris, and I told some of the other guys, like I felt like based on what I watched in the main event, that this race would actually serve well as a points race. I know there's a lot of logistics to how you would, because maybe you really can't fit 40 cars or there's the pitting aspects of it, but it raced a lot like a Martinsville. and the shape of the track, like it ovaled out a little bit more so you could get wider arc into the corners. It wasn't as pinched. And with the benefit of all the, pain we learned from Bristol last year in the spring, Bristol in the fall, Martinsville in the fall, Richmond with the tire, option tire, we've come to this much softer tire that now wears and you can actually pass people. So I was very happy with the race because I felt like as a fan, if our goal is to lure in new fans and if we're going to take this to another area, now I think you could take it back to LA, for example, and I think you get a totally different race. I think you would get a better race. Maybe not what you just got at Bowman Gray, but I think you'd get a better race because the tire is now softer. There's going to be more passing inherently just because of that. And maybe you could soften it up even more. But so I liked it. I liked the length because that's the only way you're going to get the tire wear to come into effect. You had to have long enough stage or segment to get there. That's why I think a full point race would actually prove out to be really good. Maybe you need more cars, but where do you stand?
Well, to go with what you just said, the race length. I know Larson started the race on 25 lap scuffs
Yep.
and got new tires at the halfway break. So I don't know what everybody else did, but so he ran the first stage on 25 lap scuffs,
Yeah.
and he ran better on the scuffs than he did with the stickers. So that's kind of interesting. Kind of
Yeah,
just
that once they had
something to
a
think about.
time period to cool down between the
Yeah. So
LCQ. Yeah.
he used those. I believe he used those in his heat race, not the last chance, because last chance was 75 laps. So those would have been his heat race tires,
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So
which,
they've had plenty of time to cool then.
which is weird because he sucked in the heat race, and I thought it might have been a bad batch of tires, but apparently it was set up. Um, so my overall viewpoint, yes, they got strung out and they started looking like a Martinsville race, like you said. It kind of looked like a Wilkesboro race too, a little
Yeah.
bit,
Yep. Agreed. Okay.
old school Wilkesboro race. Uh, I sort of like that. I would have been interested to see if they actually put all the cars on the track because really and truly, I mean, I didn't believe it at first, but they had all the cars. They had the 23 cars lined up, and it didn't even get around half the track.
Didn't even get
So
around. It didn't even fill the whole corner. When they
no,
were coming to
so
the green, you could see it, and they were
no,
20. There
I'm
were
talking
23
about when they
cars.
before they ever lined up, they
Yeah.
had a one by one, and
Oh
you
yeah.
had
You're right. It
it
didn't
was
even go corner to
halfway.
corner.
It was like from the start of the or the end of the front straightaway, and it was like to like a maybe the halfway point of the corner.
Yep.
So like you could have easily fit every car that showed up on that track. That's A. For that reason, you could potentially like you said you would like to see a points race here. If they do a points race, if they ever have the idea of doing it, I would only agree with it if they did every car on the track. Because there was a second on Saturday night and into Sunday, you had a really, really good shot of your second most favorite, your most popular driver missing the field.
Yeah.
Kyle Larson. I honestly, you all, everybody knows by now, I'm a huge Larson fan. And I said after Saturday night, there's no way he's making that in. No
Oh yeah.
way.
I remember texting you
And
when we had what when we were about 30 laps or so, and he got knocked back. Something
yeah.
when he got spun, and I was like, Blake's about to be pissed off
Mm-hmm.
because Larson had full control of that race that entire time, and just a
There was
byproduct
about
of
15 to go when he got involved. He hit he didn't spin, but he hit the
yeah,
car in front of him
yeah,
and damaged the front of the car. And you're like, man, but you had a chance that your second most popular driver was not going to make the field in a race that used to be for pole sitters, where he was, I believe, the guy that had the most poles last year, maybe the second
mhm,
most. So you take that into account. You cannot have a big race like this and not have your best drivers in it.
yeah,
When Brad Keselowski missed it in LA, that was bad.
yeah, yeah. You
Like
got a
you
former
can't be having
champion.
races like this where your driver your top drivers can't make it because of the way your layout is. If you can fit all the cars on there, fit all the damn cars on there.
What I
That's
liked
my
about it,
viewpoint.
I mean, I understand there's a logistical issue because of the way you come and go from the track. back behind the conference center to where they had basically the pit road, if you will. So I understand that's really the true restriction. I think at a minimum we should, if they're going to do it again next year, which I hope they do, even just for the Clash, I think there should be at least 30 cars on the track. Because I think if you add seven more and we come back with this same soft tire or softer, and what we learned this year, it can only get better from a racing standpoint because the tires, you know, it took however many laps, just like when you go to Bristol or Martinsville to run up on traffic. And it's usually within like 10 laps, you're in traffic at these smaller tracks. Well, because you have a field cut by almost 50%, you aren't lapping cars as fast. Well, when you get into lap traffic is when you get passing at a short track. You're picking and timing your passes. You're picking
Yep.
and timing your lanes. The outside lane was working, so it very much would benefit them to add seven to, I would say, I'm not sure that maybe just do it to the normal 36 chartered teams. There are no opens.
Yeah.
So you got 36 charter teams. I think you can fit 36 there,
Easily.
on the track. And I think you could work it out where, okay, you do pitting between, if you're going to have it two 100 lap stages or segments, you know, the front half, wherever they are, 36, you take the first 18, they go back. And the second 18, they just park and wait. And then when those guys come out, they fire them out and those 18 go back and they make their adjustments. And it's an exhibition event, so big whoop if it takes, it gives the TV their time to go over what's happened in the first race, first
It
half of the
also gives
race,
them time for commercial breaks.
and time for commercials, and then okay, let's line them back up and let's go.
That's another thing. I was very pleased for the parts that I stayed awake for because I did fall asleep in the class, but I
Okay.
don't know if it was because I was bored with it or if I was sick. It possibly had to do both, but I did fall asleep during this race. About 30 laps to go, I fell asleep. But they did have a lot of side by side commercials, and I noticed it. So
Yep,
it
I agree. I
wasn't
think
just here and
that's,
there, it was quite a few.
yep, I'm hoping I'm realistic to know it's not going to happen that way, but I really hope for the Daytona 500, much as I despise plate racing. Again, this is your biggest race of the year. I would hope they would put an emphasis on side by side, because especially at a drafting race, so much can happen in any given second. And how often do we come back and there's a big pile up and you're having to find out what happened and
Mhm.
all right, who's in it and everything. And you're hearing it about it on the radio and I'm hearing about it on the radio because we're listening to it. But it's, two or three laps later that you find out about it in terms of time on the TV. And then the TV, or we'll miss a key moment or a pass or a setup for, the change of the lead that happened over that break. So I'm hoping Fox does a better job with their incoming. There's going to be um, more competition in the market space on how the sport is presented this year because of the new TV partners, which is another topic I didn't write down, but something we need to talk about. So we'll get to that. The qualifying everything. Let me make a note. I meant to write that down. So in terms of what the rest of the NASCAR media said about this thing. So I listened to the teardown. Did you have a chance to listen to the teardown?
I haven't got to listen to anything. I've just seen bits and pieces of what people have said and
Okay.
what you said on our.
So I know you're out on some personal time, and that's good. So when I looked at it at the time, the good race poll was 87%. I don't think LA got anywhere near that, if I recall. I'd have to go
Oh,
look, but I
wouldn't be
don't I
surprised.
don't think it got, but the racing wasn't good. It was about a show and an experience. And so, I mean, two guys whose opinion I always look forward to and respect a lot, Jordan Bianchi, Jeff Gluck. Honestly, for the first time in a long time, I don't think they could be more off base and like their assessment of this race. They're talking about moving it. They're talking about it being too long. They're talking about it needs to go to Brazil. That this race wasn't about growing the fan base. Like this race is in NASCAR's backyard in Winston-Salem. It is to me a reward for if you go look at the TV ratings, and it's been known this market is one of the top markets for our sport, year in and year out, that whole
Yep.
triangle. And we've seen NASCAR making an effort to reward the long-term fans, the legacy fans, by bringing back things like we're going to have Rockingham this year. We're going back to we went back to North Wilkesboro, and now we're at Bowman Gray. And yes, the atmosphere there isn't the LA market atmosphere, but those people
It was better.
are, I don't, how do I say
They
this
knew it.
without saying,
They knew what they were watching.
yep,
They all had their own drivers,
yep,
and they all knew. And I did this for a reason. One, two, three. They all knew who they wanted to flip off
yep,
every single lap.
yep.
Daniel Trotta said there's a guy that every lap, he gave the double bird to Kyle Busch
Oh yeah.
every single lap. You don't get that in LA because they don't even know what they're watching. They were there for a concert all 3 years, most of them. Oh, Alan got a text.
Uh, getting my rent money. But I'm doing my podcast, so I don't want to interrupt it. Whilst they come down and scan some documents. But um, yeah, I think you're talking about two different crowds. And I can agree to some extent that LA was an experiment to prove that you could take this race to anywhere. But I don't think you should just take it anywhere. I think what we did, if we're not going to go back to Bowman Gray next year, for whatever idiotic reason they would choose not to,
Well, that'd be Ben
I
Kennedy at his finest.
I think what they did here is what they should do going forward. There should be no more LA-like experiences. We have so many short tracks, and Kevin Harvick said this in his, and I 1,000% agree.
Jamie McMurray said it on
Yep, and he
the
said the
air.
same thing during the race, I believe, right? Or during
Yeah,
the
he said
race
go
lead
to
up to it.
what did he say? What track? The
But we
track
have
in
so
North
many short
Carolina.
tracks across America that are either losing funding or support that if you were to do this for them, if you take this to Stafford, you take it to Hickory, and yeah, there's money you'd have to
Hickory. He
invest.
said Hickory.
But if you were to invest the money like they invested in Bowman Gray, it ultimately all of it funnels up because you're investing in your local racing circuits. Well, that's where your future racers are going to come from.
Yep.
That's where your hardcore fans are. And if you invest in them, just like how Larson invests in the dirt community and has bridged that gap, and him and Bell and Bowman and those guys, and going down in there and now owning the series and everything has brought attention to the sport that had been lacking. So to me, yeah, it might cost you, $2 or $3 million a year. Maybe it's $10 million a year over your 7-year TV contract. But okay, so out of your, you know, $7.7 billion TV deal you spend, we'll just call it $10 million a track. You're only going to do it 7 times in that TV deal. You spent $70 million to upgrade and put on this event. I bet you get your ROI out of that over those 7 years with your fan growth, your fan engagement. You're showing your hardcore fans, your legacy fans that may not go to a NASCAR race because they feel like they've been abandoned. You know, the people like me, you, my dad, my uncle, you know,
Chris. Yep.
Chris, that feel like NASCAR left us behind. You're showing them you still care about them. That was part of what North Wilkesboro did. That's what part of going back to Rockingham is doing. But this would grow it and it would increase the
Yep.
overall health of your series long term.
And
So
what you're doing when you go to an LA, or say they went to New York and they did a put a
yeah, they went
track
to
inside of
Oswego.
MetLife. When
Yep.
you do that, you're spending money, but guess what? That money is lost
Yeah.
because you have to tear it down.
Yeah.
With this way, you put the money in it, and it, like you said, it keeps it up on the growth. They said uh, Bowman Gray is good for the next, what they say, 30 years now
Yeah. They
because of
got
the
an upgraded state
infrastructure
of
they
the
did
art system, light system,
for.
safer
Yeah,
barriers.
so
They can
if
host
you were
other
to do
racing
that,
series now that they couldn't before. They can host trucks. They can host Xfinity.
yeah. So if they were to keep doing that instead of going into a football stadium and spending over $1 million to
Yeah.
put new pavement down, only to tear it out 3 weeks after you use it, is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
If anything, if you invested like they did in Bowman Gray, to the point I just said, you could now give the Truck Series, which is a much smaller field than a Cup Series and smaller
Well, we
garage area, and doesn't
agreed.
have the live pit stops at a lot of their stuff. You could most certainly take a truck points race there, and it would be a hell of a race. It'd be just like going to IRP, just be like going to, some of these older, when they go to Memphis or those places or South Boston. Like, yeah, let's do it. I
I
think,
what was it called? I-55.
yeah. But I mean, in Five Flags and like all these places you go now, like if you were to take this kind of money, like they just did, take it and put it in the track that they host a snowball derby in down here in Pensacola. That already draws a massive crowd pretty much yearly. It gets in, interest
Could
from
you
all over.
imagine a cup race with the Martinsville tire at Five Flags?
Oh yeah, that would be a
Oh my
phenomenal.
God,
That would
that
be
would
phenomenal.
be insane. You cannot change your tires. Good
Yep,
luck.
it's banked similar to a Richmond. It's old school stands just like the ones they got there. They could add there's some hospitality suite stuff there. Like it would do so much for that area just like the Snowball Derby does. And again, it'd just be great for the community. And that's just one example. I think what they're doing now, what they did with that, I hope they take that kind of lesson and investment and follow kind of like what SRX did, continue to take it to local short tracks all over. Uh, I get the purpose-built racetracks, and that's great to bring it into a market that you can't get to, but I think again, to your point, your return on investment, how many of those LA fans are still fans today? They came for the
I
show. They didn't come for the race. They came for the show, the Cypress Hill concerts,
My honest guess
the
would be 5 to 8%,
yeah,
maybe.
where this fan group that came, well, I think they said 40% of the tickets were reserved for permanent Bowman Gray, like resident and annual ticket holders.
And then the rest of them were spread throughout the country.
Yep. And they had people from all over the globe at this race.
Mhm.
And
What other race sounds like that? Daytona 500.
yep. So, if they don't go back, if they don't stick to what they've learned from this event, it'll be a shame. So,
It wouldn't surprise either of us, though, because Ben Kennedy's in control of that.
no, I mean, I agree. They shoot themselves in the foot more often than they do things right. This one for sure they did something right and it was good in my opinion. Like I said, I liked it from the standpoint of if I'm trying to lure in a new fan, I don't want to give them an unrealistic expectation of what they're going to see. Well, we've got Richmond, Bristol, Martinsville, Iowa, Loudon. We've got all these different small tracks that this softer tire is going to help. And you just saw what it does in a small condensed format. Now, if you tune into Martinsville, and last year's fall Martinsville race was phenomenal to close out the end, heading into and if this tire works well at Phoenix, well, now your championship race is going. So it's actually incumbent on you to show them a more representative product to why they should want to tune in all season, not just tune in and hope you get, the run into each other chaos, which Tommy Baldwin destroyed some of the guys this weekend, which we've said a long time, just and what LA basically was to advance, you just run over each other as
Hmm.
opposed to racing them. Well, the guys that ran well in the main event, Larson, Hamlin, that were able to pass, Gregson, Eric Jones, like these guys that, cut their teeth on these short tracks, but they raced. They raced clean. They raced hard, and the car supported it, and it was a good product. You got to
Yeah,
look
and the
at
ones that
everything.
outside of Blaney, the
Yep.
ones that were doing it right were the ones that got spun out in the main event.
Yep.
You know, uh, Eric Jones didn't make the main event because Josh Josh Berry was just being a bull.
Yeah. He
I
was a
mean, the
bull. And
car, I guess, got better at the end, but my God,
yeah, I was
he
I was
went
really
from
pulling for
seventh
Jones, and he
with,
got run over.
I think he was seventh with 12 to go, and he made the final show. So it shows you how much running over he did
Yep.
to get up there.
But he was never in
Good
the
for him.
conversation after
Good
that.
for the
So
team. But my God, that's
yeah.
not racing. That's one of the reasons I couldn't stand the weekend. That's one of the reasons why I think if you're gonna have a race here, let them all be in it because you could have had, like I said, a Kyle Larson miss the show due to that wreck that he was involved in the LCQ could have very well taken him out. And then you have how many people turn off your show because their guy's not in it?
Yeah. Yep. Well, you've got new teams and new sponsors and new numbers, like Michael McDowell didn't qualify. You
Oh,
know, what if SVG hadn't made it on time?
yeah.
What if, you
Well,
know,
Chase Elliott, most popular driver, don't make it. Yeah, he was
yeah,
on the
what if
pole,
he
but
didn't
what
have
if he
such a good
doesn't?
car? Which, in the last couple of years, he hadn't had the best short track car. So it was
And
actually fortuitous.
Ryan Blaney, without the provisional, he
Yep.
don't make it.
Yeah.
So what, you know, NASCAR's got to get out of your own way some of the times because if you, especially if you don't have your top five fan favorite drivers in the race,
Mhm.
you're going to have a rating issue, no doubt.
Yeah.
If
I don't
Larson
even know
doesn't
why you
make
need
the playoff,
a limit. Again, it's an exhibition race. It's not for points. With most weeks we don't have more than the 36 people showing up anyway, other than like a Daytona 500. Why are they not all in it anyway? Doesn't make any
exactly.
sense. Um,
There's no reason this shouldn't be pole winners.
yeah. So, do you think the race was too long? Separate from whether or not, do you think the 200 laps was too long?
I would have been okay with 150,
If you did 150, would you break
75,
in between or just
75, 75,
150 consecutive?
75, 75.
I guess my only issue with that is we saw, I think overall, I agree with
We
you. Maybe you cut it by 50, but then the tire didn't really drop off till about 65, 70 laps. So
well,
run out
I
of
was going to
passing
get to that.
opportunity.
75, 75, but you're not allowed to change tires.
Okay.
The only thing you're allowed to do at the break is make adjustments on where you're at that moment. If your car is loose with the tires falling off, well, you're going to tighten it up. If it's loose or if it's tight, loosen it
Okay.
up.
I can do that. If we were to shorten it, you get one set of tires. The only way you
Mhm.
can change tires is if you
The
have a
way they were
brother.
doing it Sunday night was if you cut your right front, you could change the right front. If you,
Yep.
whatever.
Yep. But if you had to change tires, I feel like then at that point you should go a lap down because you're now
Well,
definitely have an unfair advantage, especially if it's right side.
no, because having one good tire and three bad ones would be a disadvantage.
All right, you know what? You're right. You changed my mind because it's definitely gonna throw off the balance of your car big time.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. Um, so at the end of the LC or toward the end of the LCQ, uh, Ty Gibbs didn't. I'm sure he didn't mean to do what he did, but
Oh,
he
he meant to.
just
There's no way he didn't mean to do that.
no. I don't think he meant to get airborne. Is what I mean. He meant to run into
Oh
it.
no,
I don't think he
no, he
meant
meant
to
to.
go up and basically crawl over the front of his car. So my question for you is, we just had the new rules announced. If you get suspended, you lose all your playoff points right out of the gate. And he just went up there, adored that guy. The law of unintended consequence, whether you intended it or not, if you do that, that's like super aggressive driving. In a normal race, he'd have been parked if he wasn't already damaged. So would you I don't believe he's getting a penalty from what I've read because it's an exhibition race and we don't really want to start out the season like that. But how would you like to you just cost your team by showing your ass and your sponsors right out of the gate? Like if you know,
If
and
if
I
he
say
had right hooked him, I'd
yeah,
be all about doing it. But I think he was trying to break his was that toe link.
yeah. Yeah.
I
Oh,
think that's what he
I
was
think he just
trying
went
to
up there to
do.
door him and they just lined up just right. Somehow the
Yeah,
tires climbed over each
I
other.
think. I mean,
But
Doring is fine. I honestly, he did it too aggressively, but had he tried to right hook him, yeah, but that's obviously not what he was trying to do. Is right
yeah,
hook him. So I think that it was just a door gone bad.
yeah. Oh no, I agree. I think it's a door gone bad. I'm just more to the point of NASCAR has laid down these new rules, and right out of the gate, he blew his top and did
Well,
something that had an unintended
the
consequence.
seven was being a dick
Oh yeah, yeah,
all night.
yeah. The 7 was being a dick. The 77 was like they those guys were driving through people, the Spire cars essentially, and they both got what they had coming to them.
Yep.
Um, you know,
Neither one of them made show. The only one that
no,
made show was 77. That was he did that on Saturday night.
yeah. So, uh, I just think it's interesting. I'll be curious to see how his behavior is tampered down or not tampered down. If Joe says anything to him, I know they said Brad Moran with NASCAR said on Sirius today that they will sit down and have a discussion with him, but it doesn't sound like there's any like financial or point penalties or anything like that coming.
Well, you can't do that because they
And I don't
wasn't
think
doing
there,
point
and I don't
trace.
think there should be. I'm just saying in terms of when you look at it from the broader picture, we just laid out all these new rules. I would have thought that your crew chiefs, your team managers, your competition directors would have sat down with your drivers and said, listen, it's no longer going to be, you're not getting waivers if you get suspended. You're not getting waivers if you get hurt from doing something that gets you suspended or anything like that. Like, if he goes in there and he gets hurt and he medically hurts himself in the race, and it's not due to his accident, his action wouldn't have been an accident. It would have been a direct action of him trying to retaliate. He hurts himself. Does he now get a waiver? Should he get a waiver? I don't think so.
Mm.
We're not to that point, but I mean, does it in reality, would he deserve a waiver to qualify for the championship? Because now he may have to, if he had to have back surgery because you come down hard on that thing and you got the rub blocks and everything. Like I just that some of the rules they've updated, it was interesting to see him like just immediately go full, like there was no penalty. So for
Yeah.
no potential penalty for any of this that could easily, have a long-term standing
What
effect. We didn't even
what
run one lap under green for the real regular season yet.
what the what NASCAR should be looking at is that is the second time I saw a car go airborne all weekend on a quarter-mile racetrack.
Hmm.
We need to look at that
Yeah, these
because
cars
if you're
climb.
going airborne on a quarter-mile racetrack, barely touching somebody,
Hmm.
you need to fix that.
Well, I think that's a
And it
byproduct
was in
of
the
this
same spot
underbody.
both times. They hit at right at where like right before the Goodyear logo on the
Yeah.
fender. So you know they need to look at what we need to do. We need to change the shape of that area because the cars are climbing up on each other in that spot.
Well, if you look at the way the body's designed and the underbody for the air, it's almost designed to climb on top of each other. And with the pan being all the way sealed across, like they're basically going to skid right over each other. There's nothing to hook on. So I mean, the
Yeah.
car is designed to. I mean, look at
Well,
what happened with
I didn't know
it.
I was watching USHRA monster trucks is all.
Yeah. So what was it? It was Watkins Glen, right? Where Brad or no, Byron ended up in the back of Brad, like all the way up behind the damn door.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, how the hell did that happen? How does the car, and that to me, that happens because the cars are so tough and the underpan keeps or prevents things from breaking away and co collapsing like they should. So I agree with you. I think NASCAR's got to look at that because that car climbing that car at that such slow speeds, I mean, they weren't going very fast and he was just
Uh,
boom.
what do you want? Maybe 20, 25?
Right. So that was kind of crazy. Let's see here. So we covered that, covered that, covered that. Uh, Where's my other piece? So one of the things um, that I know many drivers have said before, but in the new DBC format, with our new with the new people they got in there, Tommy Baldwin brought up as a former crew chief, a former team owner, spotter. He's done all these different things. That NASCAR has a habit of finding people for fighting, finding people for their behavior on track, and then it's the promo video for everything for the next you know, however many years. And he came back out unfiltered, uncensored, and completely said, like, that's bullshit. Like, you're gonna give me back my $10,000 fine. Like, you fined me $10,000 for something about tripping over tires or doing something, but then they used it and generated however many hundreds of thousands of views and everything is like, so really you should be paying me, not I'm paying you.
Yeah.
And he said he walked into the taller at one point and brought up like to NASCAR reps, like, you gonna give me my money back? And they just laughed at him. But like you're using, you're telling me not to do it, but then you're using it as marketing material. So how bad is it really?
Yeah. They still use Ross Chastain's wall ride for Martinsville.
You hear
Can't
it on
see it.
you hear it on all the MRN you know, calls. You hear it when you call into
Yep.
Lionel, you know.
Ross Chastain did a video game move every
Yep.
single time.
So you hear that all the time. And it's just wrong. So, um,
We've been to Martinsville what 4 times since then,
yep, and it's
and
still a point of
and it
discussion.
they every time we be you know we got to bring this up. Look at what happened. Da, da, da. Although we can't
Mhm.
have it happen anymore, but look at what happened.
Yep,
Why? Stop bringing it up. Can't do it anymore. Stop showing it.
yep. Let's see what else.
Qualifying.
Yeah, so we're gonna simplify it. We talked about that. I think that's good. Um, the one thing I'll say, I did talk to,
Did we talk about it on air though?
yeah, the OEP thing. So did we talk about that it should be limited? So some
Isn't it
debate.
limited?
So it's not. It's limited to. So some discussion topics I was listening to that this thing doesn't. This rule has a lot of areas that need to be fleshed out. That I think as it gets used, I hope NASCAR will add clarity in future revisions. For example, like Chris said when we first talked about it, well, what's to stop a team from just filing 36 OEP requests? And how do you choose who's the more qualified person to put in? If Jimmy Johnson or Max Verstappen both apply for it at the same time, are you really going to choose Max Verstappen because it'll be a bigger get for you
Well, hell yeah.
advertising wise over a seven-time, your current last reigning seven-time champion who is also a team owner? You're going to choose the outside guy over your current guy who you need voting in your favor for issues and stuff. Like it creates some very interesting uh issues on top of, I brought up that if there's no limitations on when you can use it right now, like everybody keeps saying, oh, this is only going to happen at Daytona. I don't think that's true. I think if you had a big race in the playoffs and,
It's going to happen in Mexico,
it's going to happen in
guaranteed.
Mexico. It's going
There's
to
going to be
happen.
somebody in Mexico that has a OEP,
It could happen in Indianapolis. You know, it could happen in
baby.
like any of your big market, it could happen at Darlington. It could happen or Bristol. Some of these guys are like, these are your big marquee events. I want to run that because it looks awesome. Well, there's nothing stopping them, if the team wants to do that. But the problem I see with it, and we talked about it a little bit, is that I don't think you should be the OEP should be completely off limits during the playoffs, period. You should not be able to just show up, have a guaranteed spot, and you are not just potentially, you will, no matter what you do, you're going to have some impact on the 16 people vying for a championship. And
Yeah,
that
I think I
shouldn't
heard
happen.
somebody on the late shift on Sirius XM bring that up.
He sounds familiar. Like
Yeah. Oh,
I might know him.
that's right. It was you.
But yeah, and Todd Gordon, former crew chief, now host, and Brad get like at first they were kind of against it, and I got them on board because you're talking about so much money and bonuses for teams and stuff that's tied to sponsorship and advancing to the rounds. Like anybody that qualifies for the race could cause an issue, but there should be no free passes into those races. If you're gonna show up and qualify, we're gonna run 38 cars or 40, whatever. That's fine if you make it in that 40s. But
I think this is one of the dumbest rules we've ever had. Could
yeah.
you imagine? I'm just going to bring 98 up because I can remember it really well.
Mhm.
Could you imagine 1998? I believe we had 55 cars show up for Daytona 500.
Mhm.
Could you imagine? 43 started it. Hey, we're going to let uh, Schumacher from F1 come in and be the 44th car, no matter what.
Right. Can you imagine what Dale
1998.
Earnhardt would have had to say about that? Rusty
He's
Wallace.
been like, Michael Schumacher's great and everything, but we all have to, you obviously probably half of the cup field was guaranteed in due to points,
Yeah, it was a different structure
stuff like
back then.
that.
But still.
It was, you had provisionals and shit like that. But you're telling me that even after 21-25s, Michael Schumacher's definitely in. Could you imagine
Mhm.
the absolute hell that
Yeah.
would have brought? And now you're telling us on a year that we have more entries than we've had in how many years? 10?
At least this is the first time we're talking probably close to 50 entries in a long time.
And you're going to tell me that he's guaranteed in and Jimmy Johnson's not and Martin Truex isn't and this guy's the only stock car experience he has in an IROC car back in the early 2000s.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
It's the dumbest rule, one of the dumbest rules I've ever heard. It's
Yep.
stupid.
We talked about it when we first came out, but I still stand by it, because it's still a topic of discussion because it's going to be till we run the 125s and we see if he qualifies on time or if he's just there taking a spot for free. And yeah, he's not collecting money and points, but he most certainly can impact somebody else's money and points for the season. You can put him in a hole. So I just I do not agree with this giving somebody a free spot. It's a participation trophy is what Tommy Baldwin called it, which is exactly what it is. Um, but the biggest thing is it again, you every week, you know, Xfinity names are made here. Cup Series, we're the best drivers in the world. Well, if we're so damn good, why do we need to give somebody a spot? They should have to qualify on merit.
Mm-hmm.
F1 doesn't say, you know what, Kyle Larson, you've won a Cup Series championship, you've won all these races, you've got all these chili bowls and everything else. We're just going to give you a spot on our grid with one of our billion-dollar investment teams. And to be clear, Oracle Red Bull Racing, Max Verstappen races for that's $1 billion race team. But so is Rick Hendrick Motorsports. Four of those cars is $300,000 a car on any given weekend, and he's got four of them. And then he's got the charter costs, and like that's a
I
billion-dollar
might
racing company too.
I might be wrong on this number, and I'm sorry if I am, but Red Bull
Yeah,
spent in 2023 $220 million on a racing season. 220 million.
yeah,
And so
just on a season.
on a season, and they went over. So they actually went over the luxury tax or
Yeah,
whatever it is. They got in trouble for it.
yeah,
But this shows you, you know, the difference in their model,
yeah,
and that's another reason they're not letting, and especially most F1 fans think Kyle Larson's crap,
yeah.
which is hilarious, but
But
they
even
don't
if it
think
wasn't,
that.
they don't even take Michael Andretti, world famous, phenomenal open wheel racer. Won, and he's won in F1. He's won in NASCAR and he's won in Indy. And they won't even let him come into the damn field. He's won, I believe
He's
he's won
got,
he's won the 24 hours of Daytona. This Sebring, all these things. Like,
and then
and
you
he's
got his
not good enough.
dad. Yeah,
But so if he's not good enough to get a spot, and again, it's the way the sport chooses to carry itself that's my problem.
yep.
You market it as names are made here, market it as we're the best in the world. Why are we lowering our standards? This is supposed to be hard. It showed just how hard it is to make the Indy 500 when Fernando Alonso failed to make it the first time. And you saw how devastated he was. And you also saw the elation from him when he qualified for it. You saw how excited Kyle Larson was when he qualified on time trials and how much effort he put into it. So why are we giving out spots? Why are we, dumbing down our sport?
Yep. You're never
Yeah.
going to see IndyCar give a 34 spot to Indy 500, even if it is somebody that brings eyes to their sport.
You know, if you take it outside of racing, you don't see the Chiefs going out there and just picking somebody from another sport or another, from the XFL or the USFL and saying, you're good
The
enough to be our backup quarterback,
Canadian football.
or Canadian football and being like, you know what? Patrick's hurt for the year. You're the new quarterback for the Chiefs. They would never do something like that. You have to earn your way. Like nobody
Yeah.
gets into these top tiers of things with a free pass. So why are we doing that? And it's all in the name of ratings. But
Mm-hmm.
that to me, it like I said, it's an unnecessary rule, but it more than anything, it reeks of desperation. Why are we acting so desperate? We F1 pretends like they're better than everybody else. Why do you not want to? if you're so much better, why do you want to lower your standards? Why do you want to pretend like you're less than? Because this is you saying you're less than for sure. That
I,
that you're good. Your stuff is so hard that you're going to give somebody a free spot, but it's also so hard that they don't need to show up and display any of their real skill. They can get in, even if they suck and wreck the car on the first lap, they're in.
they are so hungry for mid 2000s ratings
Yep.
that they're doing whatever they can to get them now instead of doing everything the right way.
Yep.
If they would have thought about if they would have thought about this a little bit longer before the charter agreements were sold and done, even though they don't want charters, you could have done what IndyCar just did.
Yep.
Hey, every race you're guaranteed everything but the Daytona 500, and then you wouldn't have to worry about this.
Yep. Yep. And I think that's the right way to go. I like the IndyCar model of our biggest race of the year where we have all this attention and all these cars show up. Everybody's got to earn their spot. Everybody. Nobody, not our best teams don't get in automatically, and neither will Kyle
There,
Larson, neither will
there is a
Fernando
chance that
Alonso.
all three of Roger Penske's cars could miss a
Yep.
show, and it's his show, and they could all miss it.
Hmm.
And that's great. That's amazing.
Yep.
Although it kind of contradicts what I said earlier about
You
the
don't want them
clash.
to miss it, but at least it's fair for everybody there.
Yeah,
And, it's the
with the
same
clash, it's
set of
not really
rules.
fair.
So, all right. So we got a week off before we get to the Daytona 500,
Yeah,
which
sort of.
we've got the Super Bowl in between. And
You got
I,
qualifying Tuesday, right? Or is it Wednesday?
it's
Tuesday is practice.
qualifying Wednesday, duels
So Tuesday,
Thursday.
there's an hour of practice.
Yep. So we've got a very, it's again, it's sad. We had 2 weeks of speed weeks at one point in time, and now we have what is essentially five
Speed
days
half
of
week.
activity, very condensed.
Speed half week.
So be happy. No, I'm not happy. I want all my content back. I want
No, I
the
said
media
speed
session.
half week.
Oh, speed half weeks. Yeah, you're right. So we'll see what happens there. I
I
just
do like that they're actually giving an hour of practice back
mhm.
because before you had teams that don't ever race their first lap on the track is qualifying. That is terrible.
Yeah,
There was no way to work out the bugs. The car hasn't been on a racetrack ever, and you're going to let them just go out there and qualify for the biggest race with no thought about what might go on.
yeah.
So I'm very glad they gave them a practice.
So you watched? Did you at least watch the heats in the last chance qualifier?
Yeah, I watched all of it. Like,
Okay.
well, last 35 laps, I fell asleep. But
Okay, so the reason why I'm asking is we had a lot of movement over the offseason. Michael McDowell goes to Spire, Todd Gilliland, Noah, Zane Smith, like
your buddy
the
Ty
front
Gibbs,
rows, all that stuff. Riley Herbst. So who in their new position impressed you the most out of what you saw? Because we had basically a small Martinsville race, like a condensed Martinsville race, like a halftime. So, you know, the teams already knew how their cars ran from last year, and it basically ran that way. Who out of the gate with their new team impressed you?
I know who you're going to say, so I'm not going to say it. I'm going to leave it for you.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, I'll bring it
Okay.
up.
All right.
um, but I'm kind of torn between Noah Gregson and Ryan Preece.
Okay.
They both look pretty good. They both were being calculated. They weren't
Yep.
being jackasses. I think Noah's a jackass once, but I mean, it's short track. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, I was slightly impressed with Ty for a small while, and then he just started being Ty.
Yeah.
But between unless you don't say who I think you're going to say, it's between Noah Gragson and Ryan Preece. I don't think um, I wasn't giving Ryan Preece much thought before that event, but now I'm kind of giving him more thought. I still think Chase Briscoe is going to do great this year in the 19,
Yeah.
but but that's my thoughts on it.
So I'm with you. I think Ryan Preece and Noah Gragson were the two that stood out to me the most that were big moves. Noah with his ability, the way he was able to pass on the outside, same thing with Ryan. They were able to make moves with those cars, and they're not just they're entirely new combinations. They're starting over from scratch. He went from the uncertainty of SHR over there.
Hmm.
Um, my disappointments were well, Eric Jones wasn't with a new team, but he really impressed me. You know,
Mhm.
the way he ran. I've seen Eric Jones race the Snowball Derby several times living down here in Alabama, right, 45 minutes from Pensacola, where the Snowball Derby is. So I've watched him race now several times, and he runs really well. So I was impressed by him.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think Noah and Ryan were probably the two standouts to me for entirely new situations. Uh, they're both
So
still.
that's your answer.
Yeah, yep, those are
Damn
my
it.
two. Who did I leave out that you were thinking?
SVG.
You know what? I don't know why, but it
SVG
did
looked
not occur to me.
fantastic. He looked fantastic, and you're spot on. He was great at Martinsville. Why won't he be good here? Well, he was good. He looked really
Yep,
good.
yep.
Uh,
You know what? And I did say that. I was expecting, and AJ Allmendinger for a lot of that race ran really well where he was at on the outside as well, because again, those tight turns at these at these short courses also are a lot of those road work braking styles that you need to succeed at a place like Martinsville, at a place like Bristol and so forth that you've got to have those technical capabilities. So who was your biggest disappointment to start?
biggest disappointment. Uh,
Again, just the
uh,
people that are new positions.
New positions.
Yeah, yeah.
Riley Herbst did show shit.
I don't think they even talked about him. Like that's how bad he
He,
was.
every time I saw him, he was the last two or three cars on a restart.
Yep,
Like
he was several
he
laps down.
he was never thought of. Even in the before he went laps down, he was just nowhere. Like he I don't know. I don't know how soon he went laps down or why, I don't remember. But he
Yeah,
just did.
I would say he's my top, but he's number two for me. Number one is Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell,
No.
yes,
He
yes,
he
because
almost he was doing good and got spun out. I mean, that's not his fault.
no, no, but here's my logic. So just listen to my logic and you tell
I'm
me if
here.
I'm
I'm
off
listening.
base. All right, so Michael McDowell is a former Daytona 500 winner. He won at the Indy Road Course. He won a ton of poles last year. He's done nothing but continually improve. He went to Spire, where they have everybody says was going to be a better car. He got to bring his crew chief, so he wasn't starting over there. So it's not like he had to learn a new system. They've had all off season to build these cars, and we've seen Spire's cars are fast with what Hocevar did, with what Todd Gilliland did last year. So to me, for a seasoned veteran to start there and not have to build a whole new relationship, and he's a prior two-time race winner, and as good as McDowell has been, and he was really good at Martinsville when he was in the 34. So to see him struggle, I was just surprised. He's my number one, like biggest disappointment, just because he was going to allegedly better, faster cars. And his teammate Hocevar was fast. If he wouldn't have been running into everybody, he'd have been really fast. And Haley's car was fast. They were just wrecking balls. So McDowell struggled of the three more than I would have expected. For of those three, he was not the one I expected to struggle at this race. So he's my like biggest disappointment in terms of a guy going in there with so much experience, keeping his crew chief and
I
everything.
I am pretty sure I've only watched it once, and I was sick, so I can't remember all of it. But I'm pretty sure that the 34 car spun him out in the top five of the last chance qualifier.
Right.
So
But he was in the last chance qualifier, which is my shocking thing. That,
so is Kyle Larson.
yeah,
So is Ty
yep,
Gibbs.
yep,
Both of them in the playoffs last year. So I mean,
yeah.
the way that format was kind of laid out, it's kind of you know
Well, in terms of disappointment for regular people who nothing changed, they're in my, well, Ty Gibbs ran his mouth and said, "Oh, I got nothing left to gain with this crew chief. We got a new crew chief," and he pretty much
And
sucked royally. He was
he was
fast to
leading that
start, but he
race and
dropped
almost
like a rock.
halfway through, and then he fell back, fell back, fell back. He couldn't.
Yep. He fell
Yeah.
back, lost his temper, started running into people. They started running into him, and it just fell apart. He didn't manage his aggression very well. But yeah,
One of these
so
days,
that's my
they'll hook
thought.
him up with a therapist to calm his nerves. Woosah, Cruz fra ba.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I was very I don't know why I didn't think about it, but Van Gisbergen was phenomenal. I don't think his car had a damn mark on it.
And it's, my God, that was a beautiful car.
That was so when I saw the art for these cars, because
The 188.
we collect the one in the 88 and they show them. You did, and the art on the screen doesn't really show all the ghosted in
Intricacies.
matte
Yep.
and intricacies, kind of like the old Boost mobile cars that
Mhm.
Pastrana drove with the matte black with a little bit different dark tones of black. But that one and that blue car were gorgeous. And I like the subtlety that they added with the two Red Bulls with the smiley face. Since they took away the rookie stripes, it's like, here's
Oh,
my
I didn't see that.
stripe. So, oh yeah, so that's another thing. So NASCAR has gotten rid of the rookie stripes this year. I don't know why they decided you don't need that anymore. You've got several
Oh, I
rookie.
do. I know why.
Why?
You didn't read that?
No.
For all the listeners that didn't know this, NASCAR got rid of the rookie stripe because once you've made the cup, you're in the biggest series in the world and you should already be, you're good enough to be in a cup series, so you don't need a rookie stripe.
Okay, so let's go back to Helio then. Helio's literally never started in a stock car. He's run IROC, but he's never started in a stock car, and he's not going to get rookie stripes.
Nope.
Every stock car driver at least gets rookie stripes at some point. So, but whatever. Okay,
Yeah,
I
that
guess
was
I
their
can buy into their
reasoning. If
argument.
you're in cup, you don't need rookie stripes because you're in cup.
Okay,
Well, I got one name for you, Alan. You're gonna love this.
okay,
Ready? Kevin Conway.
okay. Yep,
Who had heard of Kevin Conway before
yep,
he got the cup? And he was
yep,
rookie of the year. Why? He was the only rookie that year.
yep.
But he needed rookie stripes.
He had the
Juan
extended
Pablo
sponsorship, right?
Montoya. Juan Pablo Montoya. He was a F1 guy, but he had never ran. He ran what, three Xfinity races and
Yeah, like
two RC races.
NASCAR Mexico Series
He
or
needed
whatever. Yeah,
rookie stripes.
yep.
Their reasoning is stupid as hell.
And so, do we even have a Sunoco Rookie of the Year battle or
Yeah,
whatever it is
there's
now? Okay,
still rookie year battle.
you just don't
You
have
just
the
don't have the stripes.
well. So at least with SVG's paint job, I hope they keep that all year, other than on the Red
You'll
Bull
have to
car.
show it to me because I didn't see it.
I
I
will.
didn't see
So
that.
it runs across the bridge of the Camaro, and then
Chevrolet. It's not a
at
Camaro. It's a
well
Chevrolet.
the Chevrolero.
No, you don't. You remember they're not having any Camaro badging. It's just a
Yeah.
Chevrolet. So I was
I
being
feel like they
smart.
should just make both ends of the car a brick. Take the points off of it. But across the nose indentation of what would have been a Camaro is a yellow smiley face with two
Oh my
Red Bulls
God,
on the end, with two like cheeks, dimples, yellow, and then the Red Bulls right here. So
that's
I feel
hilarious.
like that's the perfect rookie stripe. He should have that on every single one of his cars. So when he hits somebody in the back, it's like, "Hi, I'm a rookie." Kapow.
That's pretty
I
good.
I liked it. It was good. I'm looking forward to his Red Bull cars, him and Zilich. I wonder if they'll do that on Zilich's car.
I'm sure they
Um,
will, especially after they hear us.
yeah. So, um, yeah. Let's see.
BBC's thoughts on Corey LaJoy.
Oh, yeah. All right. So,
I gotta hear your.
well, so first
gotta hear.
off, so we talked about it that DBC, you and I have talked ad nauseum about how we thought, and we've posted about it on Twitter, how we thought DBC was basically going down the drain. And
Doomed.
finally, Mike and Dale stepped in and we're like, okay, the show's kind of run its course. If we're going to keep it, it needs, some changes. Um, you know, Brett's not a spotter anymore, has all his business stuff. So his opinion really isn't relevant anymore. From that perspective, I'm sure he'd block me for that, but whatever. I mean, it's not. You're not there on a weekly basis. So what do you know anymore? You quickly become irrelevant. And that's just the reality of it. TJ started spending all his time with Dale, which when Dale shelved Mike, I thought it was so that Dale could basically have his own thing. So now he's bringing back in TJ. That's just an interesting change, like maybe the Dale Solo montage wasn't working, but so they
I
gave Freddie,
personally didn't.
oddly enough, the last one.
I personally liked it better with Mike on it,
I did
even
too.
though I wasn't a huge fan of Mike because he would interrupt at bad times.
Yep.
Dale was better with Mike.
And I think that's where it's coming from, is it's going to bring somebody back to balance him.
Yep.
So I think that part made that good. But as a result, okay, this one retired, this one's over here. Oddly enough, the one that came in last is the one they gave the DBC to and asked him, like, do you want to still do something with this? And if so, what do you want to do? So the way Freddie told
Uncensored.
it, he said, all right, I want to be able to do it. I want to be uncensored. So the podcast version is uncensored. I don't think I heard a commercial the entire time either in the
Okay.
version I listened to. So if
That
it stays
probably
that
has to
way,
do with it being
that's
uncensored.
yeah. And so I think that's fantastic. The YouTube version does have commercials and is censored, but the podcast version is basically unedited, uncensored, like it's raw. And
Nice.
so the first episode I thought was fantastic. Where there would have been breaks, it just basically goes from one segment to the other. I noticed that. I was like expecting it to like, okay, next up is this, and they lead off into where the commercial would be, but it didn't actually cut. The feed just keeps going. So they get through the initial discussions. They're roasting people left and right. They talk about Hocevar, they talk about Haley, they talk about all these guys who have no racing etiquette because they've been brought up running over people and nobody's put them in check. Then we move on to Chris's favorite guy, Corey LaJoy. We talked about it. Chris said he didn't think it was uh, meant to be derogatory what Corey said when he said, I'd rather run 20th in Cup than on a weekly basis than win a race in front of 12 people. I don't think that's what
And,
Corey meant.
and he and
However,
he also said that he'd rather do part time,
yeah.
and he didn't have he could have been full time, and I said full shit.
Yep. Yep. That was great. My face was like, oh, snap. So, in this new unfiltered version, episode 1 of 2025 season,
Apparently
they,
Carson thought the same thing.
yep, they threw this question out there to the group. Ryan Blaney said he saw it on the show sheet. They're all friends, him, Chase, and everything. He's like, oh, we're gonna have to talk about this. Freddie's like, who wants to go first? Carson Elledge, that Earnhardt blood, comes out and says, I think he's a whiny bitch. And it was awesome. I fell out of my chair. I was like, oh, this is gonna be a good season. This is how we're going. If
Yeah.
and to be fair, my wife thinks the same thing. For years, we've
Yeah,
all
she said it
listened to
on
Corey on
vacation
Stacking
earlier.
Pennies say, if I had a better opportunity, I could do this. Meanwhile, when he got in Chase's car, rightly or wrongly, whether it was fair opportunity or not, he didn't do squat. The guy who got in his car outpaced him. That's how
And now
Carson
that guy
Escobar
is
got a
still
ride.
in the same ride that he got out of.
Yep. He took a step backwards last year in performance compared to his teammates. And now he doesn't have a full time ride at all. And he had plenty of time to find a full time ride. That's just it. The number of open chairs spiraled and slowly filled up. And Corey was left holding nothing. And so he came to the conclusion that I don't want to run full time or whatever BS excuse he fed. I listened to it, processed it. I'm in agreement with you. I agree with Carson. I think he's just a whiny baby at this point, and he's full of shit.
Yeah.
You want to be on there on Sunday. You've made it your life's mission to be there on Sunday. And Tommy Baldwin brought up a good point. Do you think, and I didn't think about this, and we didn't talk about it during our thing. How do you think that made Randy feel? Two-time Busch Series champion. What do you think that said
Randy ran
about his dad and all of his success? That
I
Corey
think
thinks
I don't
that
think
little of the
Randy thinks
lower
anything
series.
about it because he had his shot in Cup and
Yeah.
he was smart enough to go down lower. And
No,
then he
no,
got another chance
absolutely.
in Cup. And it might be partially a new generation thing because he is a millennial
Hmm.
and you know, so kind of a give it to me kind of thing, you
Yeah.
know. And my daddy was a Cup driver. I'm going to stay a Cup driver too.
Yep.
Well, your daddy, like you just said, your daddy was a Bush driver. What's wrong with being a Bush driver?
Yep. And your daddy was a damn good Bush driver.
Two-time champ.
Yep. Two-time champion, won tons of races. I'm quite certain that Randy would keep his Bush career or Grand National career over his Cup career any day of the week
The,
and twice on Sundays.
the only person that I think I've seen that's came in and defended him, and we've talked about this a little bit off air, is Kenny Wallace.
Yep, I meant to bring that up.
Kenny Wallace came on, I think it was Coffee with Kenny, and he
Yep,
said, "Listen, come in here," and he's showing off his Busch Series wins, and
yep,
and he said, "Guess what? I finished 20th, average around 22nd in Cup, and I made more finishing 22nd than I did winning this trophy." And he said, "So I get what Corey's saying, and whatever. But I earned far more money in Cup finishing 22nd than I did in the Busch Series winning
yep.
7 races
Do you think
or
that
whatever it was."
the one thing I'll say with that though is Kenny is taking his logic and applying it to a time that no longer exists? That was pre-charters, pre-current driver contracts where their stuff is totally structured differently and everything. Do you
Yeah,
think
back
that's
then
still
you're
true?
structured based on where you finished, a percentage of where you finished. For instance, Davey Allison's contract was 50% of the winnings.
Yep. Jamie McMurray's was based off of winning. So with the year he's openly admitted, like the years that he won the
Daytona
Daytona
500,
500.
he Brickyard 400, same
Yep.
year.
And when he won those in the same year, he's like, that was a really good financial year.
Yeah.
And otherwise, that wouldn't have been such a good year. But he said, those, I made more money that year than I'd ever
He
made.
he won 3 races that year, and all three of them were pretty big. He won those 2 races, and he won the Bank of America 400 at Charlotte, which is a decently sized purse.
Yep. So I guess my question is, I respect Kenny's opinion. Kenny, he tells it like it is. He's very open, like a Kyle Petty. But I think Kenny's perspective, kind of like Darrell Waltrip's, if you were to ask him, is slanted because of the time period he's referring it to. Well, of course, Cup paid more back then. I don't think that's the case anymore because a back marker Cup guy, your payout is only as good as the charter seating position. So if you're constantly only finishing 23rd, 24th, and whatever that is in points money, and you don't have a lot of good tier sponsors, but if you're constantly winning races for, let's say, junior motorsports like Justin Allgaier, and you've got Brandt and Pilot or whoever, for example, I think you are probably doing better financially. Like there's a reason why some of these guys choose to stay and have turned down Cup rides. And it's known they've turned down Cup rides.
Well, they've turned down bad Cup rides.
Well, right, but that's just it. Like Corey's job building Spire, Corey's job running for Go Fast, Corey's job running for some of those others, BK Racing.
BK.
Those were bad Cup rides. They were starting park. They were back of the field, but they were his way to get his foot in the door. Would you have done that if you had an opportunity to go drive for a Penske, a Roush, a Junior Motorsports, or whatever, and win on a weekly basis? And the reason why I say this is because what Corey said was, I'd rather run in the 20s back there. If I'm there on Sunday, he's basically saying, because it keeps me in the presence and being seen. But all the guys whose jobs he wants, who he gave that letter he wanted to drive for Hendrick, Byron, one in the trucks for KBM, one in Xfinity for Junior Motorsports, ended up in the 24, succeeding when Chase moved over to the 9.
That was his flaw.
Yep.
He left K&N where he almost won the championship, lost to Kyle Larson in the last race, essentially the last couple of laps. If you've never watched that race, everybody, go
It's
watch it. It's
fantastic.
a phenomenal race. It's at
Yeah.
Rockingham, phenomenal race. Literally lost the championship in the last couple of corners. It's insane. Bubba Wallace, Larson, Corey, and it's insane battle. But it if he goes and uses the fact that he almost won a championship and gets a truck ride or an Xfinity ride, he possibly is driving for Hendrick right now.
Yeah, that's
He
just it.
possibly is
Like,
driving for Gibbs. But instead, he's got this mindset that is totally wrong. It is wrong. There is nothing about his mindset that is correct. I see what Kenny Wallace is saying, and he's right. But every cup team structures their stuff differently.
yep.
It could be it could be that it's all this driver
Well,
is
like
all
Kenny
by.
driving for DEI, for example, when he drove for Dale. Well, Dale took care of his people, so of course you got paid well running in Cup. When you had the good sponsors, in the Cup stuff back then
Yeah,
because
when
it
he
was
had Square
all,
D,
when he had Square D, when he was because he ran front Furniture Row, right? The 78.
he was their first driver.
Yeah. So, I mean, when he was running for Haas back in the big money days, even they had good money. So yeah, of course you made good money back then. NASCAR was at its peak. We
Hmm.
weren't in the current charter structure where people have been struggling for years. Like this is the first time the charters are probably going to make real money for the first time. So you can't
Yeah,
even use the new charter system. The last version, which was a 3-year average, that car was statistically a mid 20s, 25th or worse payout. And usually it was closer to the 30s. So he was objectively trying to get to 27th. Okay, we'll get to 27th. Now we'll get to 25th. Now we'll get to 20. Like that was his goal. So it was probably a 27th place. 27th place seed versus he said he turned down the offer to go run Christian Eckes's truck full time, which is a shorter schedule. But that guy with Napa sponsorship just made the final four last year in that
nearly
truck
won the championship
and damn near won the championship. And you turned that down because you'd rather run 20th. Are you really telling me you wouldn't make
because the
better
crew chief
money?
left. That's
So,
dumb. Yeah,
yep. It to me it just his logic is flawed for this generation, the contracting structuring.
yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. And and more importantly than that, besides the fact that, some really big names think he messed up. He said he turned down those offers. I bet you if he wanted to now, he couldn't even go get those offers because you just spit in the face of crew chiefs and engineers and owners and
Owners, yeah.
like, all these people that you just said you're better than that. Okay. Well, then
You're
you
so much
probably,
better that
yeah,
you
that you
lost
lost a
your
full-time
ride.
ride.
And then you he
You're so much
claims that
better
he
they
only
fired you mid-season.
he claims here's one of my biggest problem with what's going on right now. His claim that he didn't want to get away of Cody Ware.
Yep.
Are you serious?
That's what he said.
There's no way that you're going to put Cody Ware's career in front of yours if you believe all the nonsense you're saying.
Exactly. If you
Are
believe
you the
you
better
still can get
driver?
it
Are you
done,
a better driver than Cody Ware? Yes, you are. You don't want to get in the way of his career? What?
yep.
No. Don't that doesn't none of that sounds true at all.
No.
If it is, I'm sorry, Corey, but no, there's no way that's true. You
No, I
always
don't.
in racing, you put yourself first.
Yep. And they're
Every
all
time we hear
selfish.
a Dale Jr. podcast, Ward Burton put the team first instead of himself. He turned down the 28 car. He turned down this car. He turned out the 99 car.
Yep.
Look how
Jeff did the
good those
same thing.
cars
Jeff
are.
turned down so many good cars. Mark Martin did it.
Mark
Yeah.
Martin turned down a 28 car several times.
And
You
as a result,
cannot
those
be a
guys
team
all don't
first
have
guy.
championships.
You have to be for you, and he cannot seem to see that.
Yep. You gotta be ruthless.
There's no way that Rick Ware Racing said, "Hey, you want the full time ride or the part time? I don't want to step on Cody, so I'll just take part. Whatever.
Yeah.
Bullshit."
Yep. I agree. 1,000%. Um, that's all I got. Other than
Yep.
we can talk about so we don't know what's gonna happen, but who's your prediction for the Daytona 500 pole? Based on we've got a handful of guys that definitely need to qualify in on time. Obviously, if you get the pole, you're definitely in. If you're on that front row.
Well, before the poll, I gotta say that right now, I know we're not doing this, but based off of who we picked for the Clash, I'm winning. Because you guys
Yep.
picked Kyle Busch and I
Oh
picked
yeah.
Logano.
Yep.
He ran way better than Kyle Busch.
That did not do well. That did not age well. I figured Logano would do well, and he did. He ran kind of like his in-house teammate, Blaney, but Blaney,
I had
showed
to
why he's
had
like
to
the
bring
king
that
of
up. I was thinking
short
of that
track.
before I fell
I
asleep.
was I I will say, however, I can't really blame Kyle Busch because he got run into by Justin Haley. I don't even know how many damn times because Haley couldn't get down, so he just like doored the shit out of him, and who knows what damage he did to his car at that point.
Did you hear what he said in that race?
No, I
So
didn't
what
get.
you're telling me is you can do it under green, just not under caution.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
Got it.
So, yeah.
So who do I think would get the pole? It'll be a Ford. No doubt. It'll
Okay.
be a Ford dark horse. It's going to be the 34 or the 22. Dark horse. The dark horse is the 40.
I'm saying the 40 is going to be the one that gets it. I'm going
That
to go with what
storyline
is
would be insane, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. That's my dark horse.
it,
But it's going to
I
be a
just think
Ford.
Hendrick is going to put such an emphasis since they don't have the OEP to fall back on, and they don't want to run the risk of not getting this car in the show. I think, unlike their other cars where they've started to learn that it's important to have handling baked into the car, especially as this car evolves, I think this one's going to be trimmed the hell out. I think the 40 of Algar's is going to be a freaking bullet.
Yeah,
And so I think
could
he's
be
going to fit.
trimmed.
I think he's going to sit on the front row. I'm thinking it'll be the pole, but if not, he'll be the outside front row because we've already seen they know how to do it with Bowman. So consecutively and Byron and and so I think they know what they got to do for him and that'll work well. But if not, yeah, I can definitely see honestly, I can see Barry sitting on the pole. Those Penske again, those dark horse cars, the Fords are
I
fast.
just think I'm assuming I know the 34 is crew chief left and went somewhere else, but I'm
Yep.
assuming that
Yeah, he went
shit,
with them.
most of that shit stayed in house. The knowledge.
You would think, yeah.
34, 38 started up front every single drafting track. So my guess would be that would be in the house still. So
So
it's
that
gonna
would
be
make the 34 Gilliland and then who? Zane Smith
Zane Smith
or
and
you think Gregson?
also Gregson will be up there too. But it's gonna the 22 for whatever reason always qualifies better than the 12 and the 2. I don't know why, but he does.
Hmm,
So that's why I say that. So it's gonna be one of those two.
okay.
But I would not be the least bit surprised if the 40 starts on the pole.
Okay.
And then the black helicopters will lift off, and everybody will say that Dale Jr. and Rick Hendrick paid off.
NASCAR,
Everybody
much
in the
like the
field,
Chiefs are paying off the referees for the Super Bowl.
everybody look the other way as we give them a bigger tapered spacer.
Yep.
Just don't look.
Don't
It's
look.
only a 1 millionth of an inch bigger, but you know what? Just don't look.
Yep, it's just a couple hundred thousandths bigger, but it's, also this many more horsepower. So just
Yeah.
turn a blind eye.
You look the other way. Yes, here you go. I know it came out of a black box, but don't you worry.
Yep.
So
So that's what I think will happen. And then we can talk again after, I guess, the qualifying and the duels as to what we think is going to happen because we got some time. I'm sure there's going to be some more news between now and then. So we'll see what we get to talk about next week. But there's a
do
lot of
you want
stuff.
to do a duel show on Friday from what happened in the duels? Or do you
Yeah,
want to wait
yeah.
till the week after?
Well, I almost feel like we're going to have a dual show because it's very much going to depend on whether or not Helio uses the OEP, truthfully or not. And
Okay.
who does that send home? If he qualifies
Yeah.
at the
Let's
time,
do a
who
duel
got
show.
sent? So we could do a 20, 30 minute just breaking down the duels. Who got sent home?
That's cute that you think we could do a 30-minute show.
We like to talk. I'm going to pretend. Oh,
But I do have to get off here.
yeah, I know you're on vacation. I'll let you get
I'm
back
on
to it.
vacation
Appreciate your
and
time, and we'll sync back up. Hopefully, Chris will have time after the duels. We'll see what criticisms and F bombs he has for us after this gets posted.
wait, Chris cusses? Wait,
I know, right?
there's no way.
That's just like saying water is wet. Newsflash.
I didn't know that either.
I'm a little mad. DBC is like, we're gonna be unfiltered. You're taking my theme here, man. Look, we did it before you. That's all I'm saying. A bunch of
We
nobodies.
did.
Still.
That's all that
But
matters. We
actually,
did
hold
it
on.
before then.
They're uncensored. We're unfiltered and uncensored. Like,
Yes.
so we'll see how many times Freddie gets
We're
called. Dale
we're
gets.
earning our fans, damn
Yep.
it.
We'll see how many. We're not resting on our legacy. Was we only got no damn legacy, but we'll see how many times Dale Jr. gets called to the holler with this uncensored version now, with what they
And,
have to say.
and I gotta say, I love the background thing. I
Yep.
know we were going for something else when that happened, but
Yep.
it works out, I think.
Yeah, this works out, so it'll work anywhere we go. This was not the plan. We were trying to make it frame up around the video. I haven't figured out that yet, but you know,
Yeah,
going.
we were, for those of you wondering, we were wanting to have it popped up, hit record, have it show for a couple seconds, then go to normal. But this shows it the entire thing, and that's fine with me.
Yep, I
But
like
you
this.
can take a picture of your behind you now, and you can take it wherever you go.
Yep. So,
So works
all right,
out.
good show, buddy. Enjoy the rest of your time off, and we'll
Absolutely.
see
I'm
what
going to
happens
go
over
get
the
in the
next
hot
week.
tub.
All right, later, buddy. See ya.
Later.